Today we're going to be talking about all of my Meepo electric skateboards and more specifically, all of the problems that I've had with them. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new around here, my name is Ronan and I make product and tech reviews, and to be perfectly honest, this is not a video that I ever wanted to make, but in today's video I'm going to go through all of the problems that I've had with my Meepo electric skateboards. I have 4 Meepo electric skateboards at the moment. 3 of those boards were actually review boards that were sent to me by Meepo so I could review them here on the channel. And to be perfectly honest, for the most part, all of the reviews that I've given Meepo electric skateboards have been positive, but I feel like I need to be transparent with you guys and let you know all of the issues that I've had with these boards as well, because actually at this point, I feel like the problems outweigh the positives with these boards. And if you're looking at buying one of these boards and you're looking at my reviews specifically as the reason and background for why you want to buy these boards, I just want to be very clear with you guys that I've actually had quite a few problems with them. And in making this video, it might mean that Meepo don't want to work with me again in the future. And if that's the case, I'm perfectly fine with that, because for me, it's more important to be open and honest and transparent with my audience about whether or not I think a product is good than it is to have a good relationship with a brand. Okay, so now that we have all of that out of the way, these are my 4 Meepo electric skateboards. All right, so this is my Meepo V3. This is the board that got me into electric skateboarding. I've made videos about how to put shred lights on this thing. I've made videos about whether or not you should upgrade from the standard 90mm wheels and PU sleeves that come with it to the 100s. I did that. I've made videos about swapping out the bushings on this board. Like when I got it first, I really made a lot of content about it. So one time when I was taking this board to work, I was basically commuting in and out to the office on this board at this stage. And on one of my journeys, the board completely failed. It started to like disconnect from the remote. Couldn't figure out what the problem was. And I think I probably had maybe 150 kilometers done on the board at this point. Really low mileage still. But basically, I was back and forth with Meepo about the issue with the board, and they were trying to figure out if the issue was with the battery or if the issue was with the ESC. So because I'm in Ireland and Meepo are in China, there was a huge time delay. So essentially, if they emailed me, I wouldn't see it until the following day. And then if I replied, I wouldn't get a reply until the following day. So this sort of back and forth with Meepo trying to diagnose the issue took about a week. And I don't have a problem with that. They live in a different time zone. That's perfectly fine. And the whole time when I was having that back and forth with Meepo, I really felt like Meepo had my back and like they were gonna help me with this issue and they were gonna solve this problem for me. Through doing all of the tests that Meepo asked me to do, they established that the issue was in the ESC and not in the battery. And at the end of the day, they suggested that I just buy a new ESC. They weren't going to replace it under warranty, even though I didn't have the board that long. When this issue arose, it was a little over 6 months since I'd ordered the board. So I was really disappointed about that. And I was really disappointed with Meepo's customer service and how they dealt with this issue. In the end, I managed to solve the problem myself. I discovered that the issue was actually not the whole ESC, it was just with the antenna. And I have a video about how I corrected that problem. But essentially it boils down to, I put a piece of electrical tape on the antenna and this board has worked perfectly ever since. I didn't think a huge amount about the problem after I'd fixed it because I was able to fix it myself, but I do remember being bitterly disappointed at the kind of customer service and the level of service that I got from Meepo when they basically sort of said, it's your problem, you have to pay money to fix it now. Okay, so the next board to discuss is the Meepo V4S or Shuffle S. And this has been the most reliable board from Meepo that I've ever had. I've actually had no breakdowns with this board. The only problem that I had with this board when I got it first was it has the standard range battery and that couldn't get me from my home to the office on a single charge. So it meant that I couldn't use this board as a commuter board and I found that really disappointing. But I actually ended up ordering the extended range battery for that board, and once I put it on, the Shuffle S was brilliant. The only thing about the Shuffle S, it's a much more rigid deck and it's very stiff and there's no flex in it whatsoever. So on those kind of long journeys, it's really uncomfortable to use and your feet just get really tired and sore when you're using it. But that's not really an issue or a fault with the board. And it's actually IPX6 water and dust resistant. And as I said already, it is the only board that I've had no actual malfunctions or problems with. So this is the Meepo V5, and I have to say, like, of all the Meepo boards I have here, it's probably the one that I think is the best looking board. Like, I think this is a really, really nice board. It's really clean, it's really tidy. The deck shape kind of reminds me of the kind of V3 era boosted board just before they went out of business. It's really, really nice. And my initial impressions of the Meepo V5 when I first rode it and kind of first tested it was that it was a really good board. I really liked how smooth it was. I thought it was a really comfortable board to ride. My only concern with it was I noticed that the battery was draining really quickly. So I felt like I would have the same issues with the V5 standard range as I had with the V4S standard range. And also during my initial test of the Meepo V5, I noticed that one of the back wheels sounded like it was making like a crunching or a grinding noise. And I just figured something maybe wasn't sitting right. The right hand side rear wheel, when I accelerate and brake, kind of at lower speeds, is making a weird noise. It sounds like there's something rubbing in it. So I might have to have a look at that at some point, but so far it's not really having any kind of impact on the performance of the board, just making a weird noise every time I pull away or hit the brakes. Don't know if you can hear that. Yeah, not sure what that is. And I just figured that that's a bit of maintenance that I could do. Maybe if I like took the sleeve off, put it back on, that would solve it. Never really got around to doing that. And just again, because the V5 had the standard range battery, I was concerned that it wasn't going to get me from my home to the office on a single charge. So I didn't really use this board as a commuter board very much. I kind of just used it for fun, very short trips, very short testing purposes, that kind of thing. But I always wanted it to be able to go further. So I actually swapped out the extended range battery from my Shuffle S and put it into my Meepo V5. And when I did that, I was able to use the board as a commuter board, but I only ended up using it as a commuter board once. And the reason I used it as a commuter board was because my Meepo Envy was out of commission at the time because I had a broken belt. So when I went into work, it was dry and the roads were dry and everything was perfect. Throughout the day, it had been raining over the course of the day, and it stopped raining about a half an hour before I left work. So again, I came home and it wasn't raining, but it had been raining on the roads all day and the roads were wet. That's not what kind of caused the initial issue or the problem that I had. It was that grinding noise. So essentially I was about 2 kilometers from my house and the grinding noise suddenly got really, really worse, and then all of a sudden stopped and the board felt really weird and unbalanced. And when I looked down, the sleeve on the motor had come away from the motor. Now initially I thought, oh my God, the screws have come undone, and that's what I was hearing. It was like loose or something, and I was like, I just have to get the board home and I'll be able to put the sleeve back on and put it all back together and I'll be fine. Turns out that wasn't the case. What had actually happened was, in the manufacturing process, the plate on the hub motor that keeps the sleeve on the board came away from the hub motor. So essentially the sleeve was connected to the thing that it was meant to be connected to, but that thing had broken away from the rest of the wheel. And again, I have a video about this on my channel and about the solution to it. I contacted Meepo about it straight away, and in fairness, this time customer service was great. They were very apologetic. They said that this shouldn't have happened, and they sent me out a whole new motor unit. So that board now has 2 brand new motors, and I just had to replace a couple of cables in the ESC. Like I said already, I have a video about how to do all that, so I'm not going to get into the process, and everything seemed to be working perfectly. And then when I got on the board to test the board, as soon as I would accelerate on the board and hit full throttle, I would hear a beeping noise and the board would just shut down. Couldn't figure out what the problem was, and I was a little bit worried maybe I damaged the ESC when I was replacing some of the cables or whatever. Turns out that wasn't the case. Again, I got straight back onto Meepo customer service. They asked me to open up the battery enclosure, and when I did, I realized that there was a little bit of moisture inside the battery enclosure. As I said already, it wasn't raining when I was using the board, but the roads were a little bit wet because it had been raining earlier. I've used my Meepo V3, my Meepo V4S, my Meepo Envy in these conditions loads, and there's been no issues with any of those boards. So I didn't really expect that I'd have a problem with the V5, but in this instance, the V5 didn't hold up to the just road spray is all I could describe it as. Now, Meepo don't offer warranty exchanges on water damaged batteries, but in this instance, they did. I'm not really sure why that was. Maybe their customer service has improved since I had my issues with my Meepo V3, or maybe they sent me a new battery because this was a review board. So it is just in the back of my mind that like, did they just send me that battery because I review their skateboards on my channel? I don't know. But again, just to be transparent, they did send me a new battery. And now the last board that I need to talk about is the Meepo Envy. My Meepo Envy is probably a board that I've had more trouble with than I've had with these three boards combined. When I got the Meepo Envy, I was in love with it. It was so much more powerful and so much more comfortable to use than any of my other boards. But there was one thing that I started to notice. I started to notice a really bad rattle coming from the back of the board. It sounded like the trucks were loose or one of the wheels was loose. And I went and I checked everything and I couldn't figure out what the problem was. So I contacted Meepo and asked them about it, and they asked me to send them a couple of videos, and I did that. You can hear like there's a really big rattle coming from the board when it's on the road. So as you can see, like I have the 4 electric skateboards there. I've used them all on the roads. Like I know the difference between kind of just the general rattles and road noises that these boards make and like a serious rattle coming from the board. But that's what I was getting, and I was kind of back and forth with Meepo about it. And they told me that the sound that I was hearing was normal and that the board was safe to ride. So I took them at their word. And after they sent me that email, like the next time I used the board, I snapped one of the belts. So then I got to thinking, maybe that's what the rattle was. Maybe it was an issue with the belt that was on the motor. So they sent me some new belts. In the meantime, I also ordered new belts from a third party on Amazon, and I think they're quite high quality belts. All of the belts arrived on the same day. So I decided I would save the Amazon belts and I'd put the new Meepo belts on my board. And I think about 10 days later, I snapped another belt. The following day, the other new belt that they sent me snapped as well. So at that point, I contacted Meepo again. So I think they sent me like maybe 4 pairs of belts. I put the belts that I got from Amazon on the board, and I have not torn either of those belts. And I've gone from like 120 kilometers to 520 kilometers. So I kind of am wondering, just in general, about the quality of the Meepo belts. I don't think they're very good. But once I put the new belts on, I continued using it and I was delighted with myself. I was cruising along, I was taking the board up to its max speed, which I got 52 kilometers out of that board, and that rattle never went away. So I even put Meepo's 105 wheels on it to see if that would solve the rattle, but it never really did. And then the last time I was using the board, I was coming home from work, the rattle got really, really bad, and then it stopped. And again, the board got really unbalanced and I had no braking power. And when I looked back, I realized that this motor had snapped off. You can see here, this is the truck and this is the motor. This shouldn't really break ever, but it did. And that's why my board was rattling the way it was. So yeah, the hardware on the board completely failed. This happened in a part of my commute where I'm away from the road and I'm away from the main traffic and cars. If I'd been in a cycle lane where I share the road with cars, I potentially could have gone out into the traffic. So I was really, really lucky. I don't like thinking about that too much. And I especially don't like thinking about it considering that I had contacted Meepo last summer to warn them that I thought that this could happen, and that they just said, no, look, the board's fine, don't worry about it, it's totally safe. So that really, really bothers me that that was their response. I would have preferred if Meepo had come to me and said, look, yeah, you're right, that doesn't sound right, I know it's really inconvenient, but you're gonna have to send the board back to us and we'll check it out. And then if they checked it out and said, oh yeah, no, that's faulty, we're gonna replace the motor assembly or the truck, whatever, I would have been perfectly fine with that. And also, if you do a quick Google and like you Google like Meepo and their trucks, like I'm not the first person that this has happened to. They've had issues with their trucks and the reliability of their trucks in the past. I can't imagine that the trucks on the other 3 boards that I have here are made to any higher standard. So I don't feel safe using a Meepo board now because this has happened. I haven't used any of these boards since this has happened. And in fairness to Meepo, when I contacted them to let them know that this had happened, their response was to just send me a new truck. You can see that I clearly haven't fixed the board yet. I have the new truck inside, but for me right now, I really just don't feel like these boards are safe to ride, and I don't have confidence in their durability. And that's why I said at the outset of this video that if Meepo don't want to work with me anymore after this, I'm kind of fine with that, because I can't see myself looking to work with Meepo either in the future. And like, I'm sad about that because I had a good relationship with Meepo, but I can't make reviews of their products and say, I think you should buy these products and I think they're really good, because I don't anymore. I think I've had more problems with these products than I should have for the price of any of them. I think if you want to get into electric skateboarding, I highly recommend it. I think it's one of the most fun activities you can do, but I wouldn't recommend that you buy a Meepo board. So I'm sad to say that, but that's kind of where I'm at. And if you use a Meepo board, I really hope that you have more luck with your board and your board's reliability than I've had with mine. I'm gonna take all my affiliate links for these boards off my videos, and I'm going to have a note in the description of those videos explaining why. So I'm gonna leave this video here. I hope you've liked it. If you do, please give it a thumbs up. Please let me know in the comments below if you're looking at a Meepo board, if you're still interested in getting one. I would be curious. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on Meepo boards now that you know what my experience has been like. And I will see you guys in my next video.